To introduce our next inductee, John Pickens, will be the almost famous Dudley Reynolds. Dudley Reynolds played tennis growing up with his family in Anniston, Alabama. He played collegiate tennis at Furman, where he was captain his senior year. He is retired now and continues to play. The reason he is not the most famous person in his family is that his uncle Randy was the founding person of the USTA Alabama Tennis Association in 1957, I believe, if my history is correct, and its first president. And his uncle Randy was also one of the first presidents of USTA. So please welcome almost famous Dudley.
Well, what I hope will become obvious pretty quickly is that we are grateful that John and Donna Pickens returned home to Alabama. And we are also grateful that Eddie Terrell, who is his high school junior doubles competitor, partner, friend, also a Hall of Fame member along with his dad, Red Terrell. We're grateful that Eddie nominated John for the Hall of Fame tennis inductee. You know, this ceremony reminds all of us that love tennis of our shared history and the fact that we all, any of us, stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. And whether we're talking about parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, coaches, teaching professionals for sure, volunteers, somewhere along the way, somebody that loved tennis reached out, offered encouragement, gave a lesson, maybe even started a club somewhere in a town, a clinic, a program, drove us to a tennis tournament, washed our socks, strung our rackets, whatever. But it led to this connection to this sport that we all love. And we are indeed fortunate tonight to have one of the most gifted players that ever came out of Alabama to be honored tonight. And to have someone here who not only played tennis, but then after tennis had a distinguished legal career in Atlanta and then in Alabama, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But John Pickens was the generational player of his day. And his tennis achievements, which are barely covered in the brochure, but which deserve a little bit fleshing out. John was the #1 player in whatever age group he played in. 13 and under, 15 and under, 18 and under. He was the state high school tennis champion 3 years running in Alabama. He achieved the #2 ranking as a junior in the 18 and under in the country. He was the #1 doubles player along with his partner Jack Jackson, also of Tuscaloosa, in the 18 national. That led to a full scholarship to Rice University. And for those that know this period of time, this was 1963 to 1968, the epicenters of college tennis were really Texas and California. In Rice University, John couldn't play as a freshman, played as a freshman, but every year he did play, They were the Southwest Conference tennis champions. He was a two-time All-American at Rice. He was the member of the Junior Davis Cup. In his senior year, in 1968, he led the Rice team to the finals of the NCAA. And they came in second to the team of Southern Cal, who happened to have a couple of guys named Stan Smith and Bob Lutz. If you're doing your math, you're paying attention to what I just said. I said 1963 to 1968. For those of you that are not mathematicians, that's 5 years. Well, John took off a little bit of time to go play the European circuit, so he missed a season. It's the only season that Rice didn't win the conference championship. But he was a two-time player at Wimbledon. He played at the U.S. Nationals in Forest Hills, which we now know as the U.S. Open. Played the Italian Open, qualifying round of the French Open. Folks, this is a resume that for Alabama tennis players that have this kind of resume, it's a pretty short list. And I have really only scratched the surface. And good luck trying to get John to tell you about it. He's so modest and humble, you wouldn't know he did anything. But suffice to say that at the time, he was the generational player that Alabama ever produced. Now, after Rice, he decided to go to Vanderbilt Law School. And then he clerked for, and then ultimately went to work for the preeminent, still preeminent law firm in Atlanta, King & Spalding. And he started his career there. And he practiced law in Atlanta, but he has a servant heart. And along the way, it led him to a career in public service, public advocacy, public interest law that led to the founding of the Georgia Justice Project, which is still active today. This is an organization that assists individuals who cannot afford legal representation to help them navigate the criminal justice system. And he spent 20 years doing that. And after all of that, thankfully, he and Donna decided to return home to Alabama. And in 2002, he applied for a position as executive director of Alabama Appleseed, which was then about a 2-3 year organization founded in Birmingham by lawyers devoted to public issues, policy, systemic change in our society. And I just happened to be on the board of Alabama Appleseed at that time. I get a call from the then board chairman, Nick Gady, who is here tonight. He was then a partner at Bradley Arant. And Nick is calling me about this application. He's going on and on about this guy, his legal background, this public advocate, this public interest lawyer. I mean, this is the resume from heaven. This is the candidate from heaven. I mean, Alabama Appleseed, can't even believe he's applying for this job. It's certainly not for the money. And just in passing, at the very end of this conversation, Nick goes, and Dudley, I think he played tennis. I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, are we talking about the John Pickens from Tuscaloosa, Alabama? A player I've never met, but I have sure heard about him all my life. From my dad, from my Uncle Randy, who Jeff mentioned, from my cousins Perry and Walker, who are here and were contemporaries of John, and competed against him and lost to him. And this John Pickens, and Nick says, I think he played tennis. I mean, Nick might as well have said Leonardo da Vinci painted pictures. And I'm thinking to myself, confession, good for the soul. I will tell you right now here tonight that, yeah, I was going to vote for him coming on board with Alabama Appleseed. That was a no-brainer. We needed to hire him, and thankfully we did. But all I wanted to do was get him on board so I could hit with him. One time. Just one time. And we did. And between the two of us, we had one working knee, and it was John's. And it was awesome. It was awesome for me, not for him. But as I said at the beginning, as a tennis player, I am so grateful that John and Donna are back in Alabama so that we can recognize and honor this unbelievable tennis player. But more importantly, as a lawyer and as a citizen of this state, I am so grateful that John came back to Alabama to continue his work in public service, public advocacy, public interest, which he did for almost 15 years at Alabama Appleseed. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming and congratulating John Pickens, Alabama Hall of Fame 2019 inductee, and a wonderful human being.
Thank you all so very much. Definitely, I really appreciate that introduction. It really does take me back a long way. I really appreciate that. I'm sorry that Eddie Gerald is not here right now. He was here earlier, but he had to leave because he's still a member of a rock band. He had an engagement. It had been on the books for 6 months or more, but I really want to thank Eddie for nominating me because he and I go back a long way to our junior tennis days here in Alabama and in the South. And I also want to really thank the Alabama Tennis Association, Hall of Fame Committee, for the honor you've bestowed on me tonight to be in this crowd of such great people that have done so much for tennis and have been such wonderful players and teachers. And I'm really humbled by being here and receiving this award. Dudley's introduction is really sort of ancient history. Mentioned 63 to 68. I guess that's what it is, and that was really my heyday of playing games. Really, it's taken me back, and I came across a couple of things that really spoke to me about how ancient it is. Over the years, I've kept my USTA membership card, lifetime member. I think my parents gave me that at some point. I'm not sure how they number those cards right now, but I pulled out my card, which I have here with me tonight, some time ago. My number is 000000082. So I don't know if they still number that. Maybe number 82. And another thing I came across recently that really takes me back and takes me right to this place. I came across a Birmingham News article, photograph, related to the Dixieland tennis tournament here at this stadium. And if you can picture a photographer behind the net on one of those lower courts down there, and if you can envision 3 young guys running toward him, jumping over the net, clip, and there are 3 guys, July 16th of 1957. And it's Bill Maurer from Madison, Lindsey Miller from Madison, and myself. And I think I made it over. It looked like I made it over the net. But that sort of really takes me back. I really want to thank my family for being here. My wife Donna, and we just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary in November, and been with me a long time. And here at the table are our two sons, Ryan Pickens and Neil Pickens, and their lovely wives, Kelly and Keenan, on this table back here. And I also want to recognize our 5 grandchildren. There's Michael Pickens there, Langley Pickens, Franklin Pickens right here, Elora Pickens, and the youngest one, Andrew Pickens back there. You may have heard him already. But I really appreciate them being here. Brian and Neil and their families have come from Atlanta and Nashville to be here tonight, and I really appreciate y'all being here. I am really grateful for this honor and feel very humbled in the presence of so many people who have given so much to tennis. Personally, it means a great deal to me, and I really appreciate this honor. But I really, I think in the theme of who the honorees are tonight with Richard and Jock, it gives me the opportunity to say thanks to 2 men who are now deceased, but whose pictures you'll see up here on the screen as members of the Hall of Fame. And these men are Jack Evans and Jason Morton. And I want to tell you a little bit about them, and it intertwines with my history and my development. I was probably about 9 or 10 years old in Tuscaloosa when Jack Evans started at a tennis clinic out on the university courts. And my parents, who were always very supportive of me and started me in tennis, enrolled me in this tennis clinic. And at the end of the tennis clinic, they would have a little tournament. And I think for 2 or 3 years, I won whatever little division I was in. But Jack Evans really got a lot of interest in tennis going in Tuscaloosa. And he had the vision of founding a racket club, tennis club. There wasn't a tennis club in Tuscaloosa. It was a country club, but no tennis club. And so he got some of his contemporaries to get together with him, to get a bunch of people like my parents and some other parents to become charter members of the Tuscaloosa Racket Club. And that was formed, well, probably back in 1957, 58, something like that. Earlier than that, actually. But shortly after they got that going, they built a club, house, a swimming pool, 4 Rubico tennis courts. And Jack Evans had the vision, we're in the South, we can grow grass. Let's have grass courts. So we had a bank of like 8 grass courts that they set up. And about a year or so after that, he brought in Jason Morton. Jason was the pro at the Montgomery Country Club at that time. And he came in as a tennis pro. And from the time I was about 12 years old till 18, those 2 men were the reason, really, that I'm standing here today. Jason taught me, gave me lessons, encouraged me. Jack was a very avid and enthusiastic tennis player and played with all of us in youth tennis and encouraged us. And without those 2 men, I wouldn't be standing here today, as well as my parents who encouraged me and supported me all along. And I think that story sort of illustrates the value of what so many of y'all do and what Richard and Jock and so many of the others do with youth tennis. You can't ever really know what impact you'll have on somebody's life. But Jack Evans and Jason Morton certainly impacted my life for the better, and I really wanted to acknowledge them tonight. I'm really grateful for my years in tennis. It's a great sport. It really gave me the opportunity to compete and to learn the lessons of tennis, from how to win and lose graciously, how to work hard, how to respect your opponents, how to be honest in your playing. It gave me a chance to really meet a lot of great people. It gave me the opportunity to really travel the world to play tennis. And without that, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that. The only regret I have really in all this is that I haven't given back to tennis all that it gave to me. But one's life sort of unfolds, and sometimes you don't quite have control of that, and it goes one way, and you go off and do something. But I wish I had done more to give back to tennis for all that it gave to me. And lastly, I would just like to say that I don't think I would probably be standing here tonight if I hadn't come back to Alabama. And I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I wanted to recognize tonight my friend and colleague Nick Gady, who doesn't mention Nick and Joanne, his wife are back there. Nick was the chairperson of Alabama Appleseed Center, and he was the first one I met at Appleseed and came over and interviewed. And I applied to Alabama Appleseed, but I said, you know, I don't have any chance of getting this. But I've been in Alabama for 30 years. I was in Atlanta. But thanks of Nick and Dudley, they decided to hire me as executive director of Appleseed, and I'm really grateful for that. And really grateful for Nick and Joanne as a couple to welcome Donna out to Alabama and be with us as friends. So that's it, and I really want to thank everyone who had a part in this for my induction, and I'm greatly honored, and thank you so much for being here. John, thank you for being here, and my friends Alan and Ann Strand that supported me in our tennis endeavors. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.